Hi everyone, welcome once again to A Course in Miracles with Burt Harding and Suzy. I have a beautiful quote to read to you from the Course. It's from Chapter 8, The Treasury of God. It says here in the Course, truth can only be experienced. It cannot be described and it cannot be explained. So the question is, what are Burt and I doing here if it can't be explained? Well, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, honey, Burt received some amazing insights from the Holy Spirit, which is a new way of really trying to understand the crux of the Course and the truth. So, Burt, can you go ahead and discuss what it is you've just discovered?
Okay, thank you.
Sweetie?
Today we're going to discuss what truly matters. And what is it that truly matters? Truth, isn't it? And the reason it matters is because it is the only thing that never begun, will never end, and has no time in it. In fact, it is the eternal beingness. And who is not interested in the eternal beingness? There's a quote here. Okay. So if we were to define truth rather than the normal way we talk about truth as a religious thing, because truth is not religious or it is truly spiritual, because that's our true nature. But how would we define it, the truth? See, so we would say that truth is awareness itself. Now, awareness, because it is the truth of our being, never began and will never end. Now, that's quite something when you consider that your true nature is awareness itself. So let us start to go into the dynamics of this so that we can explain what you have just introduced me to say. In the very beginning, which of course there's no beginning, no end, in the very, very start of everything, we were one with God. We were awareness, pure awareness. And we lived in that kingdom. So therefore there was everything that is good. We didn't have a body, but we were spirit. And we had love, happiness, joy, peace, everything that can be imagined that would give you fulfillment. However, at one point, there was a mad thought that thought, I wonder what it would be like if I can experience my separation, if I can experience being separate from others. And the moment that thought came into being, a whole new revolution took place. And this is what we stated as the Big Bang, the fall of man, the real start of, as what you call, history. See, in this particular time, we have no records of it in history at all. But we know one thing, that time has no beginning and no end. So I want you to concentrate on that, please. That which is eternal has no time. If it has no time, now these are all the beautiful things that can happen to us if we realize it. First of all, what is beyond time? Awareness itself. We were always aware. Just feel that, please. There was never a time when you were not aware. This means that you were never born. And this is backed up by very ancient scriptures, incidentally. So now, if we were never born, then what happens when we start experiencing the oneness, not the oneness, sorry, the separation, okay? Then everything was broken up in the sense that the truth was followed by consciousness. You see, the moment that we had that break, we had that, what is it called, the fall?
Tiny mad idea.
The tiny mad
or the
idea,
fall.
or the fall, right, was born consciousness. Now, we revere consciousness. We talk about consciousness as the basic truth. It is not. Because consciousness has time and space in it. That which is true, that which is eternal, has no beginning or end, and therefore has no time or space in it. It was like the home we had enjoyed in the very beginning. But now, consciousness is born. The moment consciousness is born, and we were born in time, we began to forget our true nature. And so this is the cycle of the beginning of our knowledge, the beginning of our scholastic education, the beginning of understanding the world. This was the time when we thought was the beginning. Okay?
Consciousness?
But
So
now, consciousness, we think, was the beginning of life.
right, but really this pure awareness, which is synonymous with oneness, is our real true nature.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, this is what makes the difference. Now, I would like you to listen very, very carefully, please. Don't agree or disagree, but start feeling it out. What is the difference between consciousness and awareness? Awareness is the eternal. Remember, awareness has no beginning or end. It is the truth. So where does consciousness come in? See? You have a code there, right?
Well, yeah, consciousness comes in. According to the Course, consciousness was the first split after the thought, the wondering of what would it be like to be separate. And it also says consciousness is the domain of the ego.
That's what the Course says.
That's
right?
what the Course says.
It's the domain of the ego.
Of the ego. So it's a sense of separation from God. It's a sense there's a separate me. Consciousness is awareness of me. For instance, subject and object. In oneness, there was just oneness. There wasn't subject and object. Into consciousness comes the subject, me, and the objects are everything else out there.
Right. So it creates the split, the separation, in other words.
A separation,
Okay.
yes.
Now,
Yeah.
within that separation came the ability to adjust, to cope. So this is where the world has got to come in. So the Course in Miracles says that God did not create the world. And in fact, as we explore the truth, from the vantage point of what I'm saying, that the truth is changeless, has no beginning or end, we can see how this is a fact. So therefore, in truth, we lived in this kingdom of God, but then, because we wanted a form, we wanted to feel separation, we created a body. When we created a body, then everything created itself as the earth, as the world that we experience.
That's the Big Bang.
And that's
So consciousness then went poof, and then...
That's right, and consciousness was born. But now, you see, in our education, everywhere else, the only thing that we marvel at is consciousness. We never think the possibilities of what produced consciousness. And this is where the big question comes in. What was before consciousness? And that's, like we said, the awareness that never ever was born, was never changed. This is God. This is the being that we share time with God, in other words, with, okay? So here are now a few statements that might back up what I'm saying. Awareness is the aliveness of the discovery of aliveness. In other words, we feel we are alive, we feel we know we are alive, but this is not the one I really wanted. Just as awareness is pure joy, so is consciousness, self-consciousness. Here where we see the difference. That awareness itself is pure joy. And when we think of joy, think of a child, very small child, or think of a puppy, or think of innocence. Because in our true nature, when it's not hampered, we are in joy, and the joy is eternal. What takes place instead of this particular expression of total awareness is consciousness. But consciousness has created something else which has produced all psychological suffering. It's called self-consciousness. I am consciousness, and I am aware that I'm consciousness, but we're not thinking about awareness now, because awareness is really something. But then we say, but I'm aware that I am consciousness, therefore I am limited.
Right, and there goes the joy.
And there goes the joy.
And now there's other conditions.
And we become self-consciousness. Right, yeah.
So consciousness is tied to the sense of an individual self, whereas awareness is the oneness and recognizing there are no separate interests.
Beautiful. That's right, yes.
So, but here's a question with regard to it. It seemingly happened, but the condition of existence, as you said, we were never born, so we're still really in that state of awareness, but we're just being confused.
So in our natural state, we asked, why aren't I happy? Why don't I feel this joy? Why aren't I perfect? Like the Course says. Because, again, we have identified with consciousness. Okay. But we have to identify with consciousness when we have a body, because the body is produced by consciousness. It's the very product of consciousness. Therefore, the body itself is highly limited. So when we have a body, all we ever think about 95% of the time is the body.
And me. Brushing
teeth, taking a bath, taking care of your health, exercising, going to work, earning a living, clothing, food, etc., etc. All the time you're thinking about the body, and it takes you away from the very thing that you are, which is, of course, pure awareness, pure being, the truth itself. So in truth, even though this Big Bang happened, and this is what's truly important here, it has happened when we, for a moment, began to think in terms of time. Wondered. But in truth, there is no time at all. So we have to stick with the truth, and the truth is timeless. If truth is timeless, and the truth is who and what we are in spirit, not the body, but in spirit, therefore we are also timeless in spirit. If we are timeless in spirit, then the only way to find back into the joy which we started out with, and that eternal beingness with God, is to go back to the spirit, to the eternal spirit. And the eternal spirit means that in this very now moment is the eternal. Therefore, there is no future and there is no past. When we start to begin from that view of seeing life, then everything begins to change. Because now we're not living just from consciousness. We are living from pure awareness. And so, can we live both? Yes. As a matter of fact, here we are being tested. Being tested through the body, living through the world of suffering. Suffering because, again, we are very limited being. Because we think that we are, we're going to die, we're going to finish. We believe in limitation. We can't help it because we have made consciousness our truth.
Right.
Okay? And because of that, we are self-conscious. Self-consciousness is all the dilemma, all the 28 levels of psychology that terms diseases, disorders. Yeah, emotional disorders are brought on by this idea that we are this consciousness.
In the body, right? So,
in the body.
So there's two camps. In psychology, the idea is that the body just was born into an existing material world, and consciousness somehow generated out of our brain. And that's why we identify ourselves as a separate individual. However, people who are starting on a spiritual path are starting to discover that, if they're really honest, that the consciousness is actually transcendent of the body. But even that isn't home. And a lot of people think, oh wow, that's spiritual awakening. It's the journey home, but it's not the awakening, because there's still consciousness. There's still sense, I'm no longer a body, but now I'm this separate mind, this mind in which all this is occurring. So that's still not back home to this awareness that you describe.
Right. So therefore, there is one way to look at this, to look at the truth again. Can truth change? So if we are awareness, if God is fact, and this is fact, this is eternal, therefore time still is timeless. In other words, consciousness brought the idea of time. So everything takes time to build up.
Memory,
but
right?
in truth, in our spirit, there is no time.
There's no time.
If we realize at this moment that the body we are using is not the truth, we are the spirit that never was born or will never die. The moment we identify with that, even a little bit, we begin to go beyond the sense of time. The moment we go beyond the sense of time, then the past and future we don't become slaves to it, in other words.
We know the guilt is gone and the fear is
And the guilt is gone. If we live in time, which most people do, unfortunately, until they learn the truth, you see, we live in what is called a sense of guilt or shame, a sense of something is wrong, we're not good enough. And that feeling of not being good enough, there is something wrong, but I don't know what it is in everyone who hasn't realized the truth.
In a way, that's karma too, right? Because karma is the perpetuation of this past, idea of the past and future.
Yeah, but I wouldn't like to talk about karma, because it is a very ephemeral thing. It's a thing that changes.
Right, but we still awaken from the idea of karma when we get to pure awareness. There's no karma at that point.
Right.
So even
at that point, there's no karma.
So even if we think we have multiple lives, once we go from consciousness to awareness, we not only escape the guilt and the fear right now, we also escape completely any kind of karma that we think we've built up, because it's not true.
That's right.
Yeah.
You
So
see,
it's freedom.
what we call karma is the perpetuation of the lie we tell ourselves that I'm a
Right,
body.
right.
And so
Exactly.
therefore, because you believe you are a body, then of course, even when you pass away, you still might look forward to create another body, which of course most people do, until you learn your lessons on earth. Because earth is made up of consciousness, which is filled with pain, really, you see. But we learn from this pain, and we learn that what is abiding all the time is the spirit that we are. The moment you start living from spirit, slowly peace awakens, and you begin to experience joy. And as you experience joy, you're experiencing your true nature, then you begin to transcend the limitation. And that's the whole point. So the thing is that we're often told that awareness and consciousness are the same. This is the biggest, it's absurd. If you look into the dictionary and you find out what is awareness or consciousness, and it tells you that consciousness and awareness are interchangeable. And I've heard some people actually say that. Okay, they are not. They are not interchangeable. Awareness is unlimited. Awareness is eternal. Awareness is the truth. You see? Here I made some statements.
I love what you said here, honey. You said spiritual awakening happens when the realization of no self is clear. What exactly does that mean?
That's right. Where did you?
That's your very last one.
I'm sorry, because
yeah.
She made it in very large letters for me to read the point I made, but I still find difficulty reading them.
Yeah, so let me say that again. Right? Spiritual awakening, which is what we're talking about, it's the very last one here.
Yeah.
Spiritual awakening happens when the realization of no self is clear.
That's right.
So this no self is synonymous with consciousness.
That's right. Exactly. When we see that the consciousness is not the truth at all, It is a limited self. And the moment we begin to see and realize that there is no self, because there's another thing that happens too. When you have a body, you begin to think that you are a person. And that starts all the pain in the world. You see? All suffering comes from the idea that you are a person. And yet we take it for granted that I'm a person. From youth, we are told by our parents, you're a person. The name we're given, Burt, Suzy, etc., it makes you seem like a separate individual. But it is that idea of separate individual that causes all the known pain, all the known suffering. And the suffering will not cease by just going to a doctor and getting medication. Maybe it heals you temporarily. But what heals you completely is to heal that unknowing inside your heart, that you are the eternal isness, the eternal spirit.
So for that statement, as beautiful as it is, for some people it can be very scary because they think, oh, my no self, there is no self? What does that mean? I don't exist? I don't have consciousness? Am I dead? And that's where this awareness comes in. And that's where in the Course they use a lowercase self, meaning consciousness, right, or ego, and they use an uppercase self, meaning this oneness or this pure awareness.
And this pure awareness is who we are.
Who we are.
Yeah, and it's fully aware.
Right. So some people come to statements like that, and all of a sudden they shut the book or they shut their studies, and they're just terrified.
Because the greatest fear is that there is no self. Therefore, there is no me. Yeah, in truth, there is no me because there is no personal self. But this means that you are life itself. See? This is the glory and the beauty that you are, the very expression of life itself. Let's see some quotes that you have.
Sure, if you wanted me to read any of them for you, sweetie, I can.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me pick some of the ones we like.
Read them all here.
Okay.
They're all relevant.
Okay,
to
yes.
the truth.
Okay, it says, we're talking here, the first one we're talking about, it's about how the self, I couldn't say, the more the self or the ego is protected. So the more one of the it seems that once we think of ourselves as an individual self, we're now out there to protect it. We protect who we think we are. We have an image. We want to uphold our image. We consider ourselves male or female. I protect myself as a female against, predatory males, or I'm a Canadian and I protect myself against, last time some country was at war with us, people from some other country. So we think that we're helping ourselves when we have this protection of ourselves, but if we really look into the reality of it, our true self is this awareness that needs no protection. So what you've written here, and it's beautiful, it says, the more the self is protected, the greater the belief and the greater the need for a battle, which is what causes dissension among people.
Right.
And difficulties, because we're seeing us as two instead of just this oneness.
Right, exactly.
And then you go on to say, why do we attack others at all? I mean, it's a very interesting question to really think about. Why would we attack somebody? Why would there be a need to attack? And then what you've written here is also phenomenal. It says, because we need to protect an idea that deep down we really don't believe is real. So there's a part of us that knows that the separate self isn't really real.
Right.
And we're just really sort of playing a game with ourselves, like kids playing a war game.
And the more we try to protect ourselves, the more we're telling ourselves we are not the truth, believe it or not. And once we start becoming aware of what we're actually feeling and thinking, that very awareness takes us back to the primordial state of being, which is the spirit.
I see. So when we're triggered, or we think we're triggered by somebody else out there, and we suddenly have this sudden need to protect ourselves or our ego, we're actually seemingly withdrawing deeper and deeper away from this oneness and this awareness.
Become defenseless.
Right. Right. So that
you don't need to defend something that you know in your heart is not real.
Right. So when I first introduced it, I said that truth can only be experienced. It cannot be described and it cannot be explained. So we're trying to explain it here. But the explanation takes us to the experience, because as we notice this as our behavior, that we're constantly, whenever we feel bad, it's usually as a result of this sudden need to protect ourselves somehow, whether physically or our esteem or whatever it is we think we are. Forgiveness comes into play.
That's right.
So forgiveness isn't, okay, I forgive you because you didn't do something, which you didn't do, but it's really recognizing the dynamics of this.
That's right.
So ultimately, forgiveness is recognizing the dynamics.
Forgiveness is the total healing of all the pain of humanity, believe it or not. It is the great healer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's talk about forgiveness for a moment, shall we? Okay,
sure.
Because it's important. What do I say then?
Yeah, what do you say about forgiveness here? You say forgiveness is a step that's taken by an aware being who knows that the personal self is absurd. So the first thing we have to do is have this little, the Course calls it a little willingness. So we have a little willingness to consider that something different is going on here than what we consciously think. Because it's our consciousness that thinks, oh my gosh, I'm suffering. The world is suffering. There's wars. There's this virus. Everybody's fighting with each other. People seem to be splitting. Mm-hmm. But the part of the mind that thinks that is now willing to say, especially nowadays with what's going on, it has this little willingness to say, hey, I'm willing to consider something is different. And that is actually a little trigger to this awareness, right? It's the first little spark of awareness.
That's right.
That starts in us, where we're now being willing to see the truth of what's really going on.
Yes.
And so you said here, in addition
the more we turn to the eternal consciousness, not the eternal self,
mm-hmm.
which is the spirit that we are, the more we begin to feel intuitively what is right and what is proper,
right.
What is true, in other words. Yeah.
So we catch ourselves more and more within our judgments or our attack thoughts or a verbal attack on somebody, or, there's trolls out there who attack people on the internet, or they attack people on Twitter or on Facebook or in all kinds of social media. And then the third level would be like a physical attack, like hurting somebody or going to war. All of those are completely absurd when we recognize what it is we're trying to protect, an illusory consciousness.
Yeah.
And forgiveness shows us that.
Well, even when you begin to awaken to the fact that it's illusory, the first glimpse that it's illusory already begins the awakening of your true self, which is, of course, the eternal spirit that you are.
And that's
pure awareness.
And that's where peace comes into play.
And that peace comes into it. That's right.
So peace. So back in the 60s when it was popular to say, make peace, not war, that was a very advanced, aware state. The beginning of a very aware, advanced state that we're going through now.
It was the beginning of awakening.
The beginning of awakening.
Yeah.
You have another quote here that you wrote, and you said, all personal suffering is based on the idea that we need to protect ourselves. So it's going back to what you were just saying. We're constantly defending ourselves, and that's why we attack. That's why we're judging. That's why that's responsible for our crazy behavior in our relationships and the world at large. And you said next, after that, you said the best defense. So the best defense is not for me to attack a seeming other person. The best defense is to have this open, confident defenselessness. Defenselessness.
That's right. Yeah. Because the more you fight to protect yourself, the more you increase the untruth in you. Because you're protecting the personal self, which doesn't exist. And therefore, it's an unending battle. And this is what is happening in the world all the time. Now we begin to find peace when everything starts to be seen as one energy. What is the one thing that finally makes sense? The one thing we all want? Love.
This oneness.
That's right. Yeah. And you cannot experience love. How many marriages have gone on the rocks? How many separations have happened in families and in countries because love was not awakened yet. Love was not known. And what is love? Is the recognition that you and others are one and the same. Yeah.
So this defenselessness, which is a key theme in the Course, is the same as what Jesus essentially meant when he said the meek shall inherit the earth.
The meek shall inherit the earth.
Because they don't need any defense. Because
That's
what
right.
we really are can't be destroyed.
Yeah.
It can't be changed.
Yeah.
We're changeless.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
Well, I have a beautiful quote from, actually, the Manual for Teachers in the Course in Miracles. Burt just happens to have a set of the original version 1 copy of the Courses that you bought back in 1976, right?
This is the
teacher's manual. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The teacher's manual. So it says here that one of the characteristics of God's teachers, or anybody that's having a spiritual awakening, is defenselessness. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read the last 2 sentences of it, the last three or four sentences of it.
Okay.
It says, "It is not danger that comes when defenses are laid down. It is safety. It is peace. It is joy. And it is God." So that's what defenselessness gets us.
That's right. That's right. Now, if somebody is caught in this constant pain, which we know it as guilt, because the Course in Miracles says that everybody who doesn't know who they are, they suffer from a discomfort, and it's called guilt. It's as if you've done something wrong, but you don't know what it is. You just don't feel complete. Something is missing. That is your own inner being telling you that you are not seeing the truth. Another thing that happens why we keep on believing this guilt too, because we are brought up, and I have to mention this, you know, I was brought up a Catholic, and I was told that I am born guilty. And we used to say sometimes as a form of prayer, mea culpa, mea massima culpa. It means it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my guilt, it's my guilt. You see? And so when you repeat this over and over again, you begin to believe that there is something wrong with you, that there you are guilty and you're living in sin, or worse, you've been told that you were born in sin. I can't think of anything, I don't know what to call it, more horrible than this belief. We are not born in sin. We are pure awareness itself. And that is love.
So it's our mistaken identity that makes us think we were born in sin.
That's right.
And I think, I don't know, I heard actually on a German NDE video that the word sin, actually, if you were to go back and look at it, what it really means, it means a sense of separation from God or separate interests.
Which is not possible, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So we think that we got away with this. We think that we're separate. We think that, and that's why, in your case, you went to the Catholic Church and you were taught that. And I think most Western societies, even if you're not super religious, that still seems to permeate the whole society. So there's still this fear that somehow I've done something wrong.
That's right.
Right. So the good news, right, is that it never actually happened. And that's how we escape from this guilt and this sense of sin or separation.
That is correct. In truth, we are still living in timelessness. In truth, we're still living in truth.
We're still there.
Yeah, nobody
still
can take you away from truth, because God and you are one, you know. We make God very unreachable because, again, we create a religion around God. God is the very oneness, the totality of the wholeness of pure love that we all are, that has never been born and will never die. It is that which is the highest love, the highest joy, the highest peace, the highest contentment. As a matter of fact, it's been proven daily. When did it start? I think in the 70s when medical doctors discovered this recuperative
resuscitation
technique, yeah. People who died of a heart attack, for example, and the heart did not, was out of action for even a few hours, they were brought back to life. As a matter of fact, there are many cases that even lasted even longer than that, and they're brought back to life. Okay, so that's part of the beauty, but what is important, and I'm trying to say, is that every time a person was brought back to life, 90% of the time, they all say that they experienced their true home. I was at home. I didn't want to come back to earth. I was at home. I experienced delight. I experienced love I never knew before. You see, and I felt so good. I didn't want to come back. So this asserts more what we are saying here. That the truth, which is beginningless and endless, it never had a beginning. See? And all our philosophy, all our studies, everything is based on when education started, which is when consciousness came into being. And then consciousness started this whole rhythm, which many people absolutely revere consciousness. The consciousness has its beauty, it's okay, just because it's an ego, but it is based on time and space. Consciousness, when we pass away, it doesn't pass away. We still take consciousness with us in spirit. We're still conscious being. And we even remember what we left when we left Earth, for example. So there is some memory in the initial stages. I don't know how long it lasts. But anyway, the truth is that we take consciousness, but the consciousness of time and space no longer exists. See? What exists is that consciousness that we are imbued with from the life that we lived. Yeah. And so every time we grow spiritually, we're growing, we're actually extending this spirit that we are. We're strengthening the spirit that we are until everything is that one being. And then when you discover the totality of being, when you discover the endless state of what you are, that is the highest heaven, that is the highest joy.
These people who've had NDEs that you're just describing, that they all say they've experienced this oneness or this joy, it just occurred to me that Christian religion seems to be based on the idea of the fear of God, God-fearing.
That's right.
And because as a group we're all one, what seems to be happening now is that these individuals who came across a near-death experience, many of them did experience this awareness, did go into the light, but then they came back to share it, because we're not in this alone. The moment we think even in spirituality, you also don't have separate interests. So this is all shared. So the big message they're having is there's no need to fear God. And so we're healing ourselves and forgiving ourselves in this time through all of these amazing
and the fear of God is the very opposite of what is needed to be one with God. I don't know where this fear of God ever started. I know that most people believe it. I know that many religious people say, put the fear of God in you, you know.
Yeah, the Course says it started with the very first thought. So the moment, according to the Course, the moment we thought, what would it be like to be separate, there was instant guilt. And that instant
guilt was a fear of God.
Because I can do better. Heaven's not good enough for me. I can make a better heaven. I wonder what being separate would be like. Maybe I can do it better than this oneness.
Maybe that thought was.
And that moment came with this sense of guilt. And at that moment, there was only conscious. There was no material universe. And then what happened was, all of a sudden, we heard the voice of the ego, which said, "Oh my God, you've destroyed heaven. You need to run and hide." And at that moment, there was this giant manifest universe projected out, and then we identified with one of the seeming separate objects in the universe, our own body, and that's how we're hiding from this.
That's
so
right.
The guilt we have in this world, I heard this talk about by Krishnamurti recently, where he was asking, why do we even have a need to have right and wrong? Because it's just something arbitrary. Like, what if a blue glass is right and a turquoise mug is wrong? The reason we have right and wrong is because we have a need to project the guilt out. So we need to make the wrong thing guilty and the right thing good. So that's covering up. All of that behavior is actually covering up this original idea. But the good news is the separation never happened, right?
Right, the separation never happened. Mm-hmm. And the God we fear is the very love we want more than anything. Mm-hmm. And God is so forgiving that so many millions, I don't know the number exact, so many millions have been resuscitated and came back from knowing God, actually, from being in that kingdom. And they said how we felt at home and we didn't want to come back to earth. And I've learned that God forgives even the most, forgives even Hitler, for example. Okay, it's something that we can't even understand.
Because if we're all...
Because God is love itself.
Right.
God is the epitome of truth. You see? And some people, for example, believe in hell. And they give examples of being in hell. Some NDEs have said that in the beginning they experienced a form of hell. But then it was assumed that they created that belief. You see? Because they were brought up in it. And so they've experienced it because they thought, I'm not good enough. And so the moment you think you're not good enough, you experience the form of hell.
That's what we're doing right now.
And that's right.
That's what the Course says. It says, this is hell. Identifying with an ego is hell. It's
right.
very interesting because the Bible has been interpreted dualistically. But when you really look at it, a lot of the teachings really are non-dualistic. Like, for instance, the idea that you have one life, and the choices you make in that one life determines whether you abide in heaven or hell. So people take it to mean, oh my gosh, if I don't do the right thing in this body's life,
right,
I'm going to end up in hell or heaven. But the reality is it's going on right now because we have one life, but that one life is our eternal life of spirit.
That's right.
And if we make the wrong choice, identifying with a separate body in a world, we live in hell.
We'll live in hell.
Because we're on death row. If we make the right choice and recognize the truth that we're still one with God, we're in heaven.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
Yeah.
The way
that's exactly, yeah. And if we begin to see that God itself is the epitome of all that is good and right and beautiful and perfection, not only God is not incapable, but of course he doesn't judge at all. All he has is love, and that very love itself is experienced when we pass away. I had two experiences where I experienced this very truth, and so I am really talking from my heart here. And God is the most beautiful thing, and to believe in God is to believe in the eternal truth. And the eternal truth is the very spirit you are at this very moment.
Getting back to forgiveness, which is the way we realize that we are this eternal spirit right at this very moment. So forgiveness, we said that forgiveness is the recognition that there really is no separate self. But it doesn't. That's the end of the process. That's the Course calls that the atonement. That's when we recognize the separation never happened.
That is correct. That's the forgiveness.
That's the forgiveness.
That's the forgiveness.
And then it also says that forgiveness, or this atonement, or the recognition the separation never happened, is achieved through what it called an interlocking chain of forgiveness. So it may seem at first we're forgiving a person, but ultimately we're just clarifying this understanding more and more in our mind. And with that clarification, the love we have just increases and increases and increases. We no longer hold our brother prisoner to our judgments and to our attack thoughts and to our awareness. We now know we're one, and that immediately creates a beautiful sense of joy.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And every time as a matter of fact, forgiveness itself brings you to that state of perfect joy, which is pure awareness itself. There are some statements here, I think, that we...
Yeah, you want me to read some more?
Yes, could you please? Yeah.
Okay, here's one. Because all of these ideas are really helpful. It says, how do you awaken from the idea of a limited self? By recognizing that the separate self never existed.
No, that's right.
Right. And then here's another question. How do we become clear from the great difference between consciousness and awareness? And then it says, consciousness is the common belief that the sense of a separate self, that the separate self exists, and awareness is seeing that such never existed. Again, we're going to this atonement where we know we're not separate and we've never been separate.
Right.
And so we're going from this consciousness slowly into awareness through these for forgiveness, where we're seeing more and more and more of the truth of what Jesus says in A Course in Miracles.
Right. Yeah.
So here's another question.
Okay.
Why is there so much suffering? And it says, by realizing the obvious, you are more than a being. You are an aware being. So that's the end of suffering. So suffering is the Course says, forgiveness ends all suffering and loss. And I've also heard it said, and I'm not sure where this came from. Somebody told me it was from originally Hebrew, that hell is a sense of separation from God, and heaven is a closeness with God. So the more we practice forgiveness, the more we realize that consciousness is an illusion.
That's right.
And more we move into the knowing of this pure awareness.
Because we move more into spirit and away from the conditioned state of mind that tells you you're a sinner, you're bad.
Again, another thing, and you've mentioned this before, maybe we can go into it in a little bit more detail. So that consciousness is time-bound, whereas awareness is here now.
That's right. Awareness is always here now, eternally.
Right. So how consciousness keeps us time-bound by the idea that we're a separate person with a past and a future, and because of that, we believe our thoughts, we believe our memories, but that's not the truth at all.
Yes. And when we believe in time, we believe in planning for the future. We believe in planning ourselves. Now, it's not itself wrong to do this, but what happened is that even the best laid plans have a great chance of failure, and they bring misfortune. But when you start allowing your own conscience, your own being to guide you, you're always supported.
Right. Now I understand something. Why a lot of people don't like planning, and they don't like to be committed to things, because it's extending an illusory self into a future, and it creates that sense of discomfort. It's very interesting.
Right.
Now we know why people are afraid to commit.
Yeah.
Because it creates it strengthens the sense of a separate self.
That's right.
And it makes us uncomfortable.
Right.
But if we commit to love, we're all one.
You commit to love, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and another one of your statements, you said, you are awareness itself.
You are awareness itself. And that is itself enough not to worry at all for the rest of your
eternal existence.
Eternal existence.
For the rest of your life.
Right. Some people talk about abundance. You see, now there's a craze because life is separated into three beings. You know,
Are you talking the levels of consciousness? The
that's
camel, the lion, and the child?
That's right. Yeah. There are camels, which are plodding, always believing like everybody else believes. We go to the same church, the same God, the same everything. They hardly ever grow from lifetime to lifetime. Then there is the lion. The lion comes into a stage which started at the fourth consciousness, fourth level of consciousness we were. And you want a bright future, we want a home with a picket fence, you want children, and you want to make sure that they go to college, and we earn a good, amount of money. You'd like to have 2 cars, and anyway, and all this planning. Yes, you can achieve all these things, but when you achieve them, you have not arrived at where you wanted to be, in the thought that you thought you would have when you achieved them. You see, so what happens is that you have spent your life trying to achieve richness, and when you achieved it, you find yourself just as poor inside as you were when you started.
Right. Because
you can never be fulfilled by things. Things do not fulfill you.
Right, and you're simultaneously strengthening the sense of a separate self.
Right.
I'm a separate self with a Ferrari, or I'm a separate self, with an airplane.
But there's a deeper idea than that, because people say, well, okay, you're going to stay home and do nothing. You still need to pay the rent, and you still need food. But the amazing thing is this, that when you start to live the right life, by being in the moment, you do things that will bring you what you need without realizing they will bring you what you wanted. You see? Like, for example, I have worked in many jobs where I've earned good money. But then we're going through a period when kind of we like that money. But don't we have enough all the time?
We always have enough.
We always have enough.
We don't have extra, but we always have enough.
Right. Why? Because it is the law of life.
Mm-hmm.
When you obey the law of life, you're taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
You see? All you have to do is follow truth. Be true to yourself. Be true to your inner being. And then life takes care of you. Completely. It never fails. Your health, your mental, your physical, your spiritual, everything is taken care of. The moment you awaken to that, you have found peace.
And it's the greatest. It's worth way more than any other thing. Self-realization is worth way more than anything else you can do in this earth.
But you see, the second one, which is the lion stage, there is this need. They can't understand that you cannot have something unless you battle for it, unless you fight for it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not true. If you really need something, you feel that this will give you a, like, for example, if you, I don't know, want to build an ashram or build a house for a family to take care of children, like you mean well, things will happen that way. Mm-hmm. You can bring them into being by wanting love, you see?
And that's sort of community in a way.
Yes.
Because community is shared interests,
That's
helping
right.
each other out.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when there is sharing, you'll find that family, that community grows automatically. It's as if there is a power that's taking care of them. And there is. There is. This is how it ends. And then there is the third one. So there's the camel, there's the lion, which comprises most of the people in the United States and Canada, really. Everybody is working so hard to make lots and lots of money. And then there is the
child.
The child. Mm. And the child means innocence, means peace, really. You don't have to strive anymore. You don't have to struggle.
That's the defenselessness that you mentioned
defenselessness,
earlier.
Right.
Complete defenselessness.
Yes, and whenever you feel that something was done wrong to you or you have done wrong to another, you forgive it on both sides. You forgive it not by trying to forget. You forgive it because there's nothing to forgive. Mm-hmm. Because in truth, when you are directed by love, you automatically forgive because nothing can hurt you. Mm-hmm. Nothing. Because you're not a personal self, so there's nothing to hurt, you see? Mm-hmm. And when you know that for a fact, then that very forgiveness becomes the growth into the fruition of who you are as a being.
This pure awareness.
This pure awareness.
This oneness.
This oneness.
Right. At one with God.
Right.
Pure joy.
Yeah. Did we finish?
Yeah, you have a meditation left that you wrote that really helps people, can help someone.
Okay, let's finish it off with that meditation. Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to read it or do you want to read it, sweetie?
Let me see if I can.
It starts there.
Yeah. Where does it start?
Right here.
Oh, right there, yeah. Okay, let's spend a few moments here as we finish. Close your eyes, focus on your third eye, be very still, and ask yourself, who am I? What am I? Don't try to figure it out, just ask it, and be totally open. Now pause, and ask, am I just a body? Make yourself aware of who you are or who you might be, because in truth, you are the very spirit self that wants the very peace and love and joy that you know they are. In your heart, you know. Let this knowing inside you simmer. And soon an awakening moment will arrive when the truth will be revealed. You come to know by getting hunches. You're getting that feeling in your heart saying, yes, this is true. I'm allowing it to happen. I am more than a body. I am spirit. Forever. My nature is love.
Wow. That was beautiful, sweetie.
And
okay, we'll end it there. Thank you, everyone, once again.
Thank you, everyone.
And we hope to see you again soon.
Yeah.
Have a good evening. Bye.